All right, I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. And I will note that all three districts are represented. Notice of the meeting was properly posted on February 10th, 2023. And then we'll move right into agenda item number 1, approval of minutes. Discussion and possible action regarding approval of the minutes of January 10th, 2023. And I'll entertain a motion. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, motion carries. Okay, I know we have several people here for several various items, so we'll just try to move through these as quickly and as timely as possible. But I would like to go ahead and skip down to number 6 if we could for discussion and possible action regarding the selection of 2022 BOCC Employee of the Year, and then also the selection of the February 2023 BOCC Employee of the Month.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Do you want to talk about 2022 Employee of the Year or the 2023 February Employee of the Month?
Let's start with Employee of the Year.
Okay. Please remember to refer them by their numbers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Do you all have any discussion or any motions for Employee of the Year nominations? Okay. Any motion to nominate any particular number for Employee of the Year?
I'll nominate number 13.
Number 13 for 2022 Employee of the Year. Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, motion carries.
Thank you very much. Now, Employee of the Month for February.
Okay.
It's 2 KK or 1?
3. You should have 3. There's an option A.
Are we doing?
Yes, you need 2. My apologies. I was confused.
I'll do B as one of them.
Okay.
Okay, I have a motion for option B as one of the 2 employees of the month. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye, okay. Option B carries. And then do we have a motion for a second? We can do it however you'd like. You want us to do them together? Sure. Okay, perfect. Okay. Okay. Any other consideration for option A or option C to add to the option B? Okay, I will go ahead and motion to approve option B and option C as our two employees of the month for February 2023.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Perfect. Thank you, Karen. Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 7, discussion and possible action whether MIS should use BOCC resources to provide video calling service for the jail and the court systems. Mr. Dane and Rich.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This item is our help has been enlisted by the Sheriff's Office and the Jail Trust, the IT team for the Jail Trust, to house the virtual machines that would facilitate the Polycom upgrade that they would like to do. So our question is, does the VOCC want our resources doing this function
Or not.
or not? Correct.
So what exactly would that entail on your end?
It would entail probably hosting 3 to 4, based on the conversation I think we had with Polycom. I think it's 3 to 4 virtual machines in our VM infrastructure, which I know sounds complicated, but most of our servers are virtuals.
Okay.
Okay, so it's like to the tune of about 120 or so.
And so we would just be adding 3 or more to that.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
So I'm not a techie. Explain to me why the trust can't do it themselves.
I can't, other than they don't have the resources to do it.
In what manner they don't have the resources?
I don't know that they've
Funding
got.
or
I don't know that they've got the resources in the virtual environment to support 3 or 4 additional, what we'd call resource intensive servers.
So recall back to when the trust came into existence.
Yep.
There was an MOU in place
Correct.
where the trust would reimburse the county for expenses.
Correct.
Do we currently have an MOU in place?
We do not.
And the reason we don't?
The BOCC and the trust have not entered into an agreement.
Are we continuing to bill the trust for monthly services?
No, we don't have an agreement.
Okay. And did you contemplate any increase or decrease based upon the level of service that you've been providing?
We, I believe, brought to this board in September
Okay.
a reminder that this agreement was not in place as of 7/1. We were asked to update the price list. We did.
Okay.
Now, that does not include this particular project, which is part of what I'm here for now, is
Right.
if you want us to do this, so we're going to need to edit that list as well. But we're editing a list for an agreement that still hasn't been approved.
Okay. And then does this have anything to do with equipment, software, et cetera, that may have been purchased with CARES funds? And
I don't know if they were purchased with CARE or ARPA. I don't know that I can answer that.
hi, Renee.
If I might provide a little bit of insight, if you're talking about the equipment that is located, Polycom units in each of the courtrooms, that was purchased by the jail trust with the long time ago CARES funds, pre-ARP. So during the height of COVID, we continue to use that because it's cost savings to everyone.
Okay, so that was a CARES expenditure. And it's been fully, other than the trouble we're now having, it was fully implemented at the time of,
No, I don't know that it's been fully implemented. This finishes that. I think it's probably accurate.
okay, all right. Generally, has your service to the trust remained steady, gone up?
It's fairly stable. We don't do a lot of labor for them. They've got a team that handles most of their desktop support and stuff like that.
Okay.
Usually I think our labor comes in at the higher levels, networking, stuff like that. That's stuff that we actually do still maintain. As far as cost, they've been fairly stable. You know, Emails. Telecommunications.
Okay.
Spam service. Same stuff that everybody else enjoys, is just we break it down for them.
And in your discussions with them, just generally related to this MOU, you know, it was envisioned, I think, that they would be out and on their own.
The original MOU was for 6 months, the rest of the calendar year, I
Right.
believe in 2020, I believe is when the trust was formed, if I got my years right. And then it was extended, I believe, another 6 months for the rest of the fiscal year.
Okay.
I don't remember what the following one was.
So if we were
Or
to,
6 months again.
if we were to get that MOU in place, updated to reflect this,
Mhm.
then at some point, they would hopefully take over all of their data management, including this.
I would think so, yes.
Okay, all right.
Any other discussion?
Thing to consider from our standpoint. This is the first that we're hearing about this. It does affect the sheriff's office in certain ways, I believe. I don't speak for the course, but I believe we're talking about the system that we use for video arraignment. And if that's certainly something that we need to keep up. I understand that those people are housed at the jail, but we're responsible for bringing them back and forth. And you're talking about quadrupling the amount of people that would have to come into this building if this service went away for whatever reason. So it doesn't just affect the jail. I understand there's a financial side, and, the whole MOU thing. That's between this body and somebody else, but it does affect us. So I'm not exactly sure how. If we would have this flew under our radar, I would have had Based in here so we could talk about it a little bit more. But I believe it will affect us in our efforts that we would have to transport a lot more people around if this was suspended or whatever. So I don't know.
So to alleviate some of your concern, Under Sheriff Anderson, the system is working now. This would be to concentrate it into one simple piece. We're not talking about just turning it off.
Right. Yeah, we're not actually advocating one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Rich, I couldn't hear what you said.
What it does is the part that we're currently talking about right here, what Dane has mentioned, is right now all of the different video arraignment units are separate.
Mhm.
The project that we are talking about would condense it all into one point and condense it into one server. Or
So you
multiple
wouldn't
servers.
eliminate, you would just condense
This
it.
is, yes, it is a refinement of, not a removal of,
Perfect.
just to kind of alleviate those concerns.
Thank you for the clarification.
And actually, we could probably argue that there's a benefit to doing it this way
To condensing it.
Yes.
without going into too much detail
Mm-hmm.
here.
Gotcha. Okay.
Any other discussion?
I'd like to see you update again the MOU, bring it back, including this, and then let's get that done and in place.
Okay. We can do that. Anything else?
I don't
I'm
think
only
so.
one.
So is that your motion?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion to update the MOU agreement between the BOCC and the jail trust, amending portions related to this specifically.
I'd bring it to this body or the BOCC?
I'm fine with you taking it directly to the BOCC.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Do we have a second?
I have a question. So the motion is to have them do an amended draft of the MOU to present to the next BOCC meeting.
Yeah, an amended draft reflecting the updated costs, if any, to do this virtualization. And then, once that's prepared, take it directly to the BOCC for the consideration.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Agenda item number 8, discussion and possible action regarding a recommendation on management of county offices during an emergency.
You ready for me?
Yes, ma'am.
This is my item that was discussed at the previous VOCC meeting. with the recommendation that we vest the Director of Emergency Management with the authority to make a decision with regard to closure or delay of opening of the office. I did not include the actual document that was attached at that time because the discussion in that meeting was that we would come here and sort of discuss tweaks of that proposal or policy.
Sure.
At that time, we heard from a variety of stakeholders, and that is part of the proposal, right? That the Director of Emergency Management would, in consultation with the appropriate stakeholders, depending on the fact pattern, make those decisions. And that is what I would suggest that we posit back up to the BOCC.
Okay. Mr. Barnes, would you like to speak to this at all?
Good morning.
Good morning.
As always, I'm prepared to do whatever is in the best interest of the county and of our employees and in keeping our employees safe. If in fact we do go this direction, I'm fine with that. Again, just whatever direction is at the will of the commissioners and whatever can be worked out.
Mm-hmm.
There are significant challenges during process. The verbiage of checking with stakeholders is a very simple statement,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a tremendous amount of depth behind that, and there are significant complications that go with that. So if we do go that direction, again, if that's the determination that's made, I will seek guidance and we will look at some draft procedures, what that looks like. It's everything from when you can get a hold of somebody, you can't get a hold of somebody, the backup person, and you can't get a hold of them either. And then the timing aspect of that, how long do you wait? Having these messages out and implementing a potential closure or delayed opening in a timely manner is critical for a lot of operations and a lot of people, and it has direct implications on the safety again. So there's just a lot of questions and a lot of things that would have to be worked through. But again, I'm willing to do whatever we need to do to make it right, make it good, make it work well for what's in the best interest of keeping our employees safe.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. So as far as when you say stakeholders, do you have like a specific like call list in mind that you want to implement that give you specific stakeholders for him to reach out to? What does that look like?
So I think he makes a valid point that it depends on what the situation is, right? When we say emergency event, that can include a wide variety, not
Right.
simply an ice day, for
Mhm.
instance.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a good goal is to have a set of policies and procedures in place depending on the event. So who you would reach out to would change. As you're pointing out, what you need is a policy to follow and a procedure to follow that is itemized. And so I think that that's one of the goals, and that's why we included sort of broad verbiage, so as to not imply that it can just be a one-size-fits-all, because I don't think it can be a one-size-fits-all.
If I might, I think we're really, and I think the conversation at BOCC really got derailed because we were talking about two distinct type
Correct.
of events.
Mhm.
Weather-related closures are one thing. Law enforcement matters are a completely different deal. And law enforcement matters and all that entails would not, in my opinion, start with Mr. Barnes.
Correct.
He would be a piece of that puzzle, but in my mind, the first thing that would be done is law enforcement is trying to find a threat, neutralize the threat, and secure a perimeter. And things would flow from there. And, it's not the way I'm not in law enforcement, but, there's incident command and the first person on scene, and then it just develops from there. So David would fall in some part of that. The second part is the weather-related closures or delayed openings or early closures. And, consultation's great, but at the end of the day, to David's point, what does that mean? Does one BOCC member's opinion matter more? Does the court's opinion matter more? Does David say, okay, I talked to 5 people, 3 of them think we should close, 3 of them think we should open at 10? What are we doing? And so at that point, there's nothing different about that than the way it is currently going, other than maybe one person has more influence than the others, which I don't necessarily think is good. So I think we need to develop, if we're going to give it to David, we need to give it to David. And if he makes the decision and it's right, wrong, and different, then we need to stand behind him. Now, I understand consulting with people, and there was some discussion made, I want to be supportive of the courts. I know that what they do is important. But David made some really well-stated remarks about this being about public safety.
Yes.
It's about our employees. It's about the people that have to come down here, some by choice, some because they're commanded. It's about, Miles was, I think, or Commissioner Davidson, I'm not used to that yet, spoke well about the impacts that when the schools close have on our employees and those that have to come down here as well. If I have a court date, I have no one to watch my kids, they're coming with me, otherwise there are consequences. I think most of us and the people in this building are very understanding and would allow children here, but it has an impact. So, if we need to talk about having to figure out how to work with the courts to, okay, they want to be open, figure out how to open that building up and all that entails, then I think that's a discussion we need to have. But, clearly we need to decide. Are we going to have a special meeting to determine each time there's a potential for severe weather what we're going to do? Are we going to vest that in David? Or are we just going to keep it the same? And my opinion is it didn't work well. And we're not talking about a large number of occurrences here. It's, I think, 23 since 2017. So this is not something that, given David that decision-making authority is something that's going to happen all the time. So those are my thoughts. If we're gonna do this, then in addition to how is it going to work, we need to talk about notification. We need to set a time. Mr. Freeman pointed out that he has people that are on the road. Once we make a decision, whether it's closed, delayed opening, whatever, that needs to be the decision we stick with, because that first notification goes out. That's what most people are thinking. We need to allow for signage to be put up. I talked to David about them getting some type of social media accounts to put this type of information on. He's already in contact with the news media. We need to get this on our website as soon as possible. We need to potentially allow for the parking garages to be free to leave. If someone comes down here and we're not open, they come here at 8 and we're not open till noon, well, we don't need to keep them locked up in the parking garage. They need to be able to get out. So we should consider maybe, if we open the building 1 hour prior to the stated opening time, then at 1 hour prior, we start charging for garage access, ingress and egress. Those are the types of things that we need to decide, in my opinion. So
I think those are all valid points. It sounds like that there's just a lot of details and things to consider while we're trying to work this out. Yes, would you like to say something?
Well, first of all, thank you all for your considerations of the mighty things that have to go into a policy like this. The way the policy is written, this involves vesting the emergency management director with the decision. The way that it currently is operating, then the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners makes the decision in consultation with a number of people. I think that what we're talking about is this one time last week or 2 weeks ago when there wasn't some good communication, but I'm not for sure where fault rests with that. In the last 18 years, it's worked out well, where the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners has worked with the presiding district judge and consulted with a number of people, and it's worked out fine. I think that one should think about whether one incident should change a policy that's been in place for 18 years. Although perhaps it's informal, perhaps that policy needs to be formalized, that the chairman of the Board of County Commissioners, in consultation with the presiding district judge and others, then make a decision. But the problem that I see in investing with the emergency management director is that, again, same thing that I made at the Board of County Commissioners, is that with all due respect to Mr. Barnes, he's not an elected official. And when the public starts coming to say, well, why couldn't I get a VPO? Someone got hurt, someone got killed, whatever happened, the stakeholders that are going to have to answer those questions are the elected officials.
Mhm.
So I think that definitely Mr. Barnes, everyone else needs to have a role in this. I am just very concerned that changing it because of one occurrence a couple of weeks ago, when I think that, again, it's unclear as to exactly what happened and why it happened that way, is something that we don't need to do. I think that if we need to memorialize the system that has been in place for the last 18 years, then that's what we should do.
Mhm.
That being the chairman of the commissioners reaches out to a certain number of people and makes the decision. And the reason why that is important, at least in terms of the courts, is that this has to be a collaborative effort. There's a statutory provision that I mentioned last time, but it's Title 20, Section 23, that vests in the presiding district judge when and where the court shall be open. And we've always been able to work in a collaborative sense. And that's what we have to continue to do. But, and that's why I think it's better where you have the presiding judge working with the chairman of the commissioners and all that have provided advice, but rest the decision-making in the chairman of the commission, as it's always been, to make the announcement. The county owns these buildings. The county commissioners speak for the county. When the county commissioners are not in session, there is a chairperson. And that chairperson necessarily has to make certain decisions when the commission is not in session. It works that way with boards of regents. It works that way with any board. So while I appreciate the fact that maybe it puts in the chairman more weight and power, but that's just the nature of things in an emergency situation. Those are my thoughts. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion?
I think this is a good discussion about the variety of options that we have here, including commemorating existing practices or not, or the fact that they are not currently commemorated or codified in any place. I further think there's not any question as to this board's authority or the BOCC's authority to designate Director of Emergency Management or otherwise as to who will make these decisions and vest them with that power. I think that it's an important discussion to have, and I think we need to continue at least fleshing out what the policy should be, what the commissioners are in agreement to as to the process specifically, and that there aren't any questions in real time as to the process.
And Your Honor, or Renee, I think part of that discussion should be in the event that Mr. Barnes or others determines that this campus should be closed and you all want to remain open, we need to have a discussion what that might look like as well going forward. If you're, that way we're not impacting.
I think it'd be very difficult for, and the way that it would play out is if there was a situation where the presiding judge determined that the courts need to remain open or certain courts need to remain open, then the presiding judge would issue an order, can't issue an order to the commissioners, but can issue an order to the sheriff to open up the building. And then what happens? And that's why this always has to be a collaborative effort, one where you make a joint decision and you go with it. But the circumstance where we could open up portions of this building without the court clerk's office being open, then that's an issue because the court is a court clerk. And so, I think that trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater is not the right thing. I think codifying the existing protocols would be a good thing, because then we know, and then that we know, this person is called, if this person is reached, and this person is called. I think that would be a healthy process to codify what we have in place.
Well, I certainly respect the fact that, in situations like this, we do need to consider all parties involved, and that very much does include, the presiding judge and the courts. So I do believe and agree that it is a collaborative effort, and I don't necessarily think that what you were suggesting would not be a collaborative effort.
Absolutely.
So it sounds to me like there's a lot of details and such to kind of maybe work out and consult with resources and the powers that be to kind of make modifications or present a new set of policies and procedures based on the conversations that we've had with the people that are of influence in the different aspects and areas of the county annex and the courthouse. What would be your suggestion at this point?
So I think what we've made certain and clear is that we don't have a commemoration of the exact existing process today, right? That we are uncertain. And so it is my goal, and there's no question that collaboration is part of this discussion. That's why we referenced initially all stakeholders, and the discussion of who that is and what that is you're right. It's different in different situations, and I think that we have an obligation to have a process in place that everyone is aware of. But I would entertain and be comfortable with a motion to further study that and come back with a more detailed recommendation.
Okay. Would you have that?
Be open to that.
Okay. And is that something that you would have available for the next policy and governance?
Yes, or I can
Okay.
make that the goal.
Okay. Okay.
So you're going to take the lead, Dawn?
I will.
Okay. All right. Yeah, this sounds great.
Okay. So I have a motion, and do I have a second?
That would be.
Perfect. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion carries.
I don't have a. Oh. Did I move?
Yes.
I thought Joe moved.
Okay. All right, so moving on to agenda item number 9, discussion of possible action regarding an update from the Oklahoma County Juvenile Bureau in regards to ARPA Project 100016 transport vehicles. Hello, Hannah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I wanted to bring you guys an update to that particular ARPA project for us. We were able to obtain, it's been difficult to get vehicles secured over the past few months. We have contacted every dealership that is on our statewide contracts that we're able to order these vehicles from. There is only one vehicle right now that we can obtain. And in our original proposal, we had indicated that they would be obtained no later than June. All of the dealerships, especially the Chevrolet dealerships, which is what we originally quoted, cannot get us new vehicles until next calendar year that have the specs for the separate air filtration systems, which is what qualifies this for ARPA because it helps prevent COVID spread, anything like that. So we can move forward with one Expedition. It's more expensive than the original. We were originally granted $114,000. This one Expedition is roughly $55,000. So that would leave us needing, if we were to move forward with this vehicle now, we would need an additional, and no one can give us a confirmed price for next calendar year, what that's going to look like. They can give us now pricing and add on whatever percentage we request to cover what they think that might be for next year, but none of the dealerships that we contacted could give us a confirmed price for next year. And that they will not give us confirmed pricing until they have the vehicle able to order for us. So I I'd like to move forward with this one and then secure additional funding, however you guys like, for the other two vehicles. But I wanted to bring that to your attention before I move forward on it to see if that's what you wanted me to do, or wait until next year and get all three, knowing that the price is definitely going to be more next year.
Can I have a motion to receive report, document?
Yep.
Okay, motion in a second.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Hannah,
Yes, sir.
these were originally supposed to be vans, correct?
No.
No, okay, all right. And in your search, these dealerships that you've reached out to that are on state contract have searched the broader area to see whether or not,
Yes,
They're
in fact,
available.
I believe this one comes from Texas. I could be wrong about that, but I know that this one has to have something done to it before it gets here. So I believe they're outsourcing this one as well.
do you recall what you were allocated for this purpose?
We were allocated 114,000 for 3 vehicles, 2 Traverse size vehicles and 1 Suburban at that time. But I believe that was 2021 pricing.
and so this one you have here would satisfy your need for the one Suburban.
Yes. And then we're hoping to get Traverses are cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Chevrolet seems to be cheaper than Ford, especially when they start doing the retrofit and the different filtration systems. So
Right.
We would definitely look at a Traverse Chevrolet in the new year rather than the Expedition. But we think they'll be higher regardless.
The filtration system, is that a standard option now on these vehicles? I'm just looking and I don't see it noted on the quote.
It is in the, let me see. It's not standard, but it's something that with the separate, like when they put in the different, we call it a cage, but the separation between the front and the back, they have to retrofit that because the console doesn't go in, and then that adds into the air system. So Esterbrock is sick today. Otherwise, he would have that answer for you, but I can find that out.
Right, because as it stands now, and maybe our consultants can help us out, this quote doesn't appear to indicate that we're buying something for the
Correct.
stated
This
purpose.
doesn't include the pricing includes, but the specs come separately of exactly how we want it fitted with the cage and the additional options.
So your needs are for 3 vehicles total.
Correct.
And how immediate are those needs? What are you operating with right now currently?
We currently have cars that we're utilizing. Our cars are 2004, 2005, and are rapidly declining. Not only cosmetic, but we have several cars that are at the point where they have air conditioning, heating issues, not the ones that we transport the residents in, but the ones that we utilize for other vehicles that we've just had to put out of service because to repair them would cost more than the vehicle's worth. So at this point, we've reserved all of our best vehicles for resident transports, which these would replace those, so that we'd be transporting residents with these so that we could move those cars for like our court services functions that go out into the field. Things like that. We're very limited on anything other than resident transports for this. And then the resident transports vehicles that we have, like for instance, we have one that is a minivan type. It's an Uplander vehicle, but it's not fitted with rear air or heat, which means if the temperature is at all too hot or too cold, we can't even utilize that vehicle. So we have 2 vehicles that we're able to use. But several times we've had 2 transports at the same time where then we have no other vehicles to transport the residents. So we're going to be in need fairly shortly. Thankfully, we've had no issues with those vehicles as of right now. But obviously, should one of those go down, we'd be pretty handicapped in our ability to transport.
So I understand the need, but I want to make sure. Have you all seen, Stephen, or you've seen this quote sheet?
I don't think they've seen the new one.
Not the new quote sheet, but when they submitted the original request, Jamie provided the quotes at that time. Obviously, we knew things would change, and then provided the information on the separate filtration systems of the front and the back.
All of that?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're comfortable?
We don't
Okay.
have concerns at this time regarding the proposal or anything like that. Understand there's a budgetary constraint, but that falls on the decisions of y'all's.
If it meets the original intent of us giving them the funds, then I
Yeah.
would be comfortable
It
with them
does.
moving forward. And then it may end up just being you get 2 vehicles instead of 3, determined by the pricing later on, but, okay.
All right. Is that your motion?
Do you-
Or do we need one
I don't
since
know
the
that.
114,000 has already been?
Already covered. So I just
Determined.
wanted to let you know. I didn't want to move forward with that without letting you know
Perfect.
first.
Thanks,
Okay.
Sam.
Yeah, thank you for providing this. We appreciate you taking the time to come and let us know that your situation's kind of changed. And I understand buying vehicles for our fleet, how fluid that situation is.
Absolutely.
So I understand it can be frustrating. But thank you, and I'm comfortable as well.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. So then we have agenda item number 10. Discussion and possible action regarding a need for potential ARPA funding to fund the continuation of a jail tracking system. And I'll need a motion to receive documents.
So moved.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
So one thing that we are going through as we proceed with our telemental health implementation with ARPA funds is there is a very limited ability for us to communicate with our mental health providers in real time by our line staff officers. One of the constraints that we have in our organization is that we in our detention center do 100% of everything on paper. Everything from site checks to resident notes to medical notes, everything is on paper. And which not only can be dangerous because then paper can get destroyed, things like that. But when we went on a site visit to Little Rock to see Turnkey and to see their mental health providers. And they, in their system, they use a Guardian system, which allows each detention officer, as they're doing site checks, as they're interacting with their residents there, to log mental health notes, medical notes, everything where it's all handheld for them to be able to do. Not to mention them being able to record site checks with the devices. The devices also have radio functions if our radios go down. And they were just talked very, very highly of the ability for each officer as they're interacting with the resident, whether they're juvenile or adult in their system, to be able to log those notes. Because then our telehealth providers, our external providers could see that, could see how each kid is doing, instead of it just being the kind of the brought to the front emergent cases, which is what we have right now is if you've got a day room of 20 kids, the 3 that are having the most emergent issues are the ones that really get brought to the front. But then you may have other kids that also have, especially mental health or medical needs that if we're still doing things only on paper by resident request, obviously the more emergent needs are going to come forward, but this would provide us a much more functional way for us to record those and for it to be in live time so that our mental health providers can instantly see those, see the history. It would just provide such a much more functional way for us to proceed in that area, whether with medical, with mental health. We have a medical system right now, ChartMeds, which is a very small kind of like log system that we utilize, but this system would replace that. It could replace need for radios depending on what the bandwidth can handle. I haven't explored that option of it. The state has implemented this system in several juvenile facilities in the state just this year. I believe Kojak and their facility in Norman have both implemented this in the past couple of months. We're going to go see that facility on the 22nd. But I brought this up at our CJJ board meeting, and Commissioner Bloomer identified that she thought it'd be great for me to bring it to you guys so that you could see it as far as ARPA goes. Guardian provided me with how they've been able in other counties and facilities to utilize ARPA funds for this. So I didn't want to move forward with exploring other funding options until I was able to bring it to you guys also to see if there was a potential need for ARPA. The initial cost would be roughly $60,000 for the first year. After that, it would be a recurring cost of about 40 each year.
40?
Yes. That would include every 18 months. The Guardian program would replace our devices with brand new devices. There would be no upkeep. They replace batteries. They replace the full devices. We're spending quite a bit of money right now, not on any kind of tracking software. We do all of that in-house. So literally we do our staffings, we do our housing on Excel spreadsheets. Which is something that we then have to manually enter into the JOLT system or the Juvenile Online Tracking System, which requires us to continuously, and that's a state requirement that we have to have that updated multiple times a day. Where this is the way that the state is moving towards. So you don't have any human error as far as site checks go. We can pull data from site checks to make sure we're not missing any, not, hitting anything, especially with medical and mental health needs. It just gives us a lot more data for us to be able to pull, because otherwise if we want to pull data from anything that we do in the detention center, it's hand entered into a program that will do it for us. So it's a large need for us.
On the purchasing aspect of this, is this a sole source? Is this something that you visit? Is this group the only provider of this type of technology? Is this something that would have to be bid?
They're not the only providers of it. Jail Tracker is another provider. I am not positive on that. I'd have to get with Chantel as far as what specifically we would have to do to move forward. I do know that right now Guardian is the only one that would interface with our juvenile online software that we utilize with the state. So I'm not sure what our options would be with that, but I can visit with Chantel and see what our best option is.
Is that software provided by the state?
Yes, it's managed by the state.
And then if this is something that could be done relatively quickly, do you have it within your own budget at this time to take care of this? You don't have $61,000.
Not extra. I do not. Utilities are eating my lunch this year.
Okay. All right.
So I know that for the period of time that I was not involved with policy and governance, we had the opportunity for internal asks, meaning other departments within the county, to come and make requests for certain projects for ARPA funding. Was this approached at that time?
It was not. This was not something, obviously that was before I was the director, but this was not something even kind of in our wheelhouse at that time, especially with the Murder One kids coming in. Another big aspect of this is we are learning rapidly the difference in housing an average of 60 and housing an average of 75. Even because when you have mostly 60, a lot of times that turns into 50, into 45, back to 60. Right now, at any time, we have above 70. And that can go down to 60, but being at max capacity has really created housing concerns. It gives us, we're very, very limited some days, especially going into a weekend. I would say at least one weekend out of the month, we're emailing the judges, saying, I only have 3 male beds available right now. And a lot of times we have kids get picked up 3 and 4 at a time. So we're basically making a list of, if we get 3 in, who are we contacting, what's happening at housing, and the ability to move them and manage them effectively has become a real chore. So that would be another aspect of this that would be beneficial for us.
And as far as the $40,000 a year ongoing costs, is that something that your department would be able to find within your existing budget to sustain?
I believe we could sustain some of it. Based on our budget this year, I don't believe we could sustain all of it. But I guess I would say I'm not sure about that. I don't believe I can come up with an extra 40 every year. For sure. I know that this year, especially utilities, some of my utilities are up over 100% of what they were last year. So that's been a big drain for us this year on M&O. But and then replacing a few hot water heaters at $12,000 a pop have also drained that. So I would hope that I could replace some of those, you know, make up some of that cost, but I don't think I would be able to come up with 40 every year.
Okay.
So that was my question, is are you taking one-time money and then creating a hole for yourself prospectively? with this little bit
Prospectively,
you
yes.
are?
If we were to fund it with ARPA over the next few years, I would have to identify another funding source after that.
Right.
I think if you'll get some of the purchasing related questions answered and come back with us,
Absolutely.
update us there, then I'd like to have a conversation with Cody on the budgetary aspect
Okay.
going forward. But it sounds like something that's beneficial to your operation.
I'd be happy to. I just wanted to update you guys and see if there was any interest in that.
Okay.
And one other question. Is this something that will reside in the cloud? What interaction with the county system would there be at all? Is this something you've talked to Dane and Rich about?
I have not. I wanted to see if there was any interest first. It would go over our Wi-Fi. MIS has really, really helped us, especially in our D-Commons area, by updating our Wi-Fi system. And the Guardian representatives do not feel we would need any additional IT or bandwidth in our like Wi-Fi. It would all operate over Wi-Fi. I apologize, I'm not good at the terms for that, but they don't believe we would need any additional resources
Okay,
there.
so
for
in
it.
addition to Chantel, if you'll touch base with them
Absolutely.
regarding that issue and security of our network, any interplay there as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you, ma'am, very much. Okay. Moving on, agenda item number 11, discussion and possible action regarding a recommendation to transfer the administration of the Oklahoma County Shine Program from District 2 to Oklahoma County Community Services under Court Services. Now, I know that there was some question and dialogue with the BOCC when this was brought about, and so now we want to take the opportunity to answer any questions, provide any clarification related to this transfer. And I'll just lead the conversation by saying, as far as the Oklahoma County Shine Program, that essentially will not change. It is a special revenue fund. It will remain a special revenue fund. None of that will change. It's more or less strictly the administration, just going from one department to another. But I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So walk me through the funding
Okay.
of Shine.
Well, it's a special revenue fund, which gets its source of funding through a variety of sources.
Does it currently get general fund dollars?
It has at one time gotten general fund dollars.
But currently,
That was a one-time thing. So I wouldn't say currently. We are not currently receiving general fund dollars.
so it's funded from a variety of sources,
Variety of sources, yes.
right? I'm not familiar with this program, so
Mhm.
those sources would be,
Well, just depending on the year, it has varied from year to year. The Oklahoma Finance Authority has contributed. The City of Oklahoma City has contributed. Oklahoma County General Fund has contributed. The Zoological Trust has contributed. The City of Del City.
so is it fair to say we're relying mostly on agreements with other entities and donations to fund the program?
More or less, yes. They do enter into annual contracts with various municipalities to perform certain duties within those municipalities.
In the event that that funding were to end, what would happen?
Well, I can't really speak to that because that has never happened in the 10 years that it's operated.
Right, but we just asked a question about a $40,000 ongoing cost, so
Mhm.
I'm just curious. So it would be
The
a
revenue that it
general fund-
generates
It would
from
be a
the
general fund expense, potentially.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Because it's a special revenue fund, it can have a wide variety of revenue sources. And the revenue that it generates monthly from the various contracts that they are in contract with do sustain the expenditures.
But those contracts, like any contract, could potentially go away.
They are on an annual basis.
Okay. So if the funding as we now receive it goes away, it would potentially be a general fund expense. That would be the sole source, right? Other than, I think there are some fees, court fees that go to it.
Yes, but they're nominal.
Okay. So there's that potential expense.
Or there could be other revenue sources that could be identified as well.
Okay. Liability.
Mhm.
How does the liability work in terms of those individuals who are sentenced,
Mhm.
directed? I don't know what the proper verbiage is. How does that work?
Well, I do know that the community service workers that are sentenced to the program, if we assume no liability, like if there was injury or anything like that, the county does not assume any liability as far as that's concerned.
So they're performing work.
The community service workers, yes.
Are they utilizing any types of equipment?
Depending on what they're doing, I mean,
Lawnmowers, weed eaters, chainsaws?
I would say more like rakes and shovels.
Okay. All right. What about like the nature of the work that they're doing?
Mhm.
Graffiti removal,
Mhm.
right? What else?
They do various litter control in different municipalities. They tend to community gardens that are made available to the public. So they do a lot of weeding and planting, rakes and shovels types of things. Manual labor, if there's a department within the county that might need, their services in moving items from one department to another. They do move furniture in various boxes and things like that as well, just on an as needed basis.
In the litter removal,
Mhm.
Does that include homeless encampments?
It can.
What types of notification, security,
Mhm.
hazardous waste disposal? What's
So
in place?
generally, what happens
I
is
asked Grant all these questions and he couldn't answer them. So.
right. So generally, what happens is with homeless camps, we partner with the city of Oklahoma City,
Okay.
and what they do is they have a hot team that will identify certain areas that they might want assistance in cleaning up. And so generally the way that it works is the hot team will go identify, say, a homeless camp that needs to be cleaned up or some such. The hot team will go out and make this specific location aware that there is going to be a cleanup coming, that you might want to vacate the premises. If you want to keep anything that you want to make sure and take it with you, give them the opportunity to move, give them the opportunity to take whatever items they would like to take. And then they can also stand as security on an as needed basis when the community service workers actually come in and clean the area.
Okay. Hazardous waste though, right? Unfortunately, a lot of those individuals have drug or alcohol problems.
Mm-hmm.
What mitigation efforts are taken there?
As far as PPE, I know they have gloves, they have trash bags, they have masks and things of that nature. I don't know how prevalent it is for them to handle like sharps or anything, related to drug use. That I'm not necessarily aware of being too much of an issue. But they do make sure and, wear gloves and take care of themselves if they're handling sensitive type of materials.
Okay, so we're providing training.
On-site
Similar to
training.
remember when
On-site,
we used to have
yes.
public works contracts with DOC, we would have to, before they could use our equipment, et cetera, we would have to provide training. So
There is on-site training because we have a crew chief that is with the crew at all times,
Mhm.
and they supervise and facilitate and educate just on an as-needed basis, depending on the project and what they're doing that day.
And disposal is
Mhm.
handled how?
The program has various like dumpster partners throughout the city, just depending on proximity and where they are, where they're working. There are these partners who have opened up their dumpsters or whatever sort of, waste removal program that they have for Shine to utilize, just depending on their proximity, where they are, what they're doing. So there are a lot of options as far as dumpsters and things of that throughout the county.
So those have been, are they donations of that service, or how is that?
More or less. I mean, it's just a situation where it's like, okay, if you're around the corner and you need to dump some bags, feel free to use our dumpster type of thing.
Okay, all right,
So they've essentially given us permission.
okay. And then number of employees, that type of thing, how, equipment storage?
Mhm. So as for equipment storage, we rent a facility centrally located to where we store the assets that are taken out daily. And so they're locked up daily behind lock and key in a shop that's locked as well with a gate in front. As far as number of employees, we currently have 3 full-time employees, a part-time employee that are actually on the ground with the crews, and then we have 1 administrator full-time. So that would be 5 employees. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I might have something later, but I think for now, that's good.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Just remind us of the goal of moving from District 2 to the administration over to community services.
So, and it was kind of a learning experience for me when we pulled up the original policies and procedures for Shine when it was initially started. It was a surprise to me to see that included in those original policies and procedures, it said administration of District 2 or court services. So that was kind of baked into it from the beginning. Because the intention was always to kind of move it away from District 2 to a position to where it would be a better fit as far as community service. Because there's aspects of community service department within court services that do deal with these community service workers that are sentenced to community service. And it just seems to be kind of a better fit for them all to come together. That way they can, wouldn't be like the left hand not knowing what the right hand's doing. Because a lot of times the courts need reports of when these community service workers have done community service, how many hours do they have, and things of that nature. And so essentially District 2 is kind of been a middleman in that communication process. And so it would really make it more efficient, if that were taken out and it was directly under community service. They would be able to provide that information directly to the courts.
And did you say 5 employees?
Yes, 4 full-time and 1 part-time.
And forgive me, I didn't hear if you said the budget. What's the dollar figure associated with the 5 employees?
You know what? I don't have those numbers right now, but I can certainly provide that for you. I am well versed with the estimate of needs, so I don't know offhand.
There's a Shine Foundation as well.
Mm-hmm.
Interplay between this and the foundation, is that completely severed? What's that look like?
It is completely severed.
Okay.
It is completely separate entity. I think possibly the Shine Foundation has donated funds at one point in time, maybe one singular time, for our Oklahoma County Shine program, but essentially that's the only
But Grant
link.
or whoever was the head of court services would have nothing to do with the foundation side of that?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Mhm.
All right. Any other questions?
I'll move advancing the recommendation.
All right. We have a motion. I will make a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
One more question.
Sure.
The work that they perform
Mhm.
is only on public property.
Absolutely. And it has to be within Oklahoma County as well.
Okay.
I should have clarified that. Only within Oklahoma County. Good to know. Any other discussion?
Is it possible that we would make this effective the beginning of the new FY to give Grant a little more time to get familiar and comfortable, perhaps observe and be mentored by whoever it is on your staff, whether it's you or someone else that currently does this on a daily basis, so that Grant and his team can have an opportunity to learn rather than it be thrown in their lap?
Absolutely. And we've certainly taken that into consideration. And Grant, please feel free to come up and speak if you have any comments. Certainly welcome. You know, because we want this to be a team effort and we want it to succeed. And in keeping in that same vein, the administration that is actually moving over to court services under Grant is fully willing and capable to kind of assist with these things. She will be full-time a part of his office, and so that is a resource that is readily available. You know, if there are situations arise, you know, where there might be questions or uncertainty, we do have that full-time position that will be in his office available as a resource for him.
So you're amenable to making this change effective July 1?
Well, if there's not any objections with the department head, since this is definitely something that will fall under your purview, we'd certainly like to do this as soon as possible.
I don't know that it's necessarily fair to ask Grant that question, but
Grant, would you like to speak to anything? Are you comfortable?
And I'd obviously be happy to do what the three commissioners, want me to do. It would be a learning curve, right? We've always been the conduit to get someone who's been given community service hours and then get them to shine to perform those hours. And then we get those hours and we document it. And we notify the people that they've completed or not completed. But as far as the day-to-day operations goes and what happens and all of that, it would be a learn by doing. It would be just, I would have to, day one, probably go drive around with them and see what they do and how they operate. Because I know we've talked a million times. I've talked to Commissioner Mon a bunch and to learn as much as I can. But at the same time, it's new and really learning exactly how it operates, I won't know until we do.
Right.
If that answers that question.
Well, and it's good that we have a resource available in your office that will be available to you full time, who is very aware and cognizant and well versed in the policies and procedures and processes, to kind of help facilitate things and offer guidance and support as well.
In a start at the beginning of the fiscal year would obviously give me time to see what happens and how it functions, and especially if Erica's is going to be in the office here any day and talking with her and getting that up and running and figuring that out would work too. So
Okay. Well, like I said, this is a great program. It's operated for, many years, as we all know, and it offers a great service to those that we assist in a lot of different aspects. And so we absolutely want it to succeed. And we don't want to, create any hurdles or obstacles to kind of, that would impugn on that success. So we wanted, we feel like it was a natural fit for community service. I know that was the intention from the very beginning. You know, we made sure and staffed up the resources to make sure that those were sufficient to kind of minimize, you know, any issues that you might have as far as the transition period goes. You know, our administration is very willing and eager to be of assistance and help facilitate in any way she can.
Yeah, I agree. This is a great program. It's done great things in the community, and it's obviously one that we want to see continue to succeed and grow. So, yeah, again, it's going to take, you know, learning how it operates to ensure that it's managed the right way, and
Right,
day
absolutely.
to day, I fully know exactly what's happening and what's going on and who does what, because ultimately, at the end of the day, it would fall back on me. So,
Right.
just, I know I'm not really answering the question. But.
Renee, did you have something you'd like to say?
I just had a question. As you're considering this, Renee Troxel, Court Administrator. So the courts have, over the years, had to enter what we call administrative orders, a number of different documents that allow the courts then to place someone in the SHINE program. And I know within the last couple of weeks, we were asked to do an administrative order that would allow community service to be able to use and do things for the SHINE program that had not occurred in the past in terms of acceptance into the program and those kind of things. So is moving it to court services something that's going to make it easier for someone to participate in SHINE? Or I'm just curious how that interplay would work, if it's going to change how we operate, how we do things.
It shouldn't change how you operate. And as far as I'm concerned, I feel like the participation as far as the community service workers in the SHINE program is ultimately the decision of the judge, correct? Assigning. But of course, you know, it is an alternative sentencing program that we hope will continue to be utilized. And we feel like moving it over to court services might make that a little easier, since there's essentially not a middleman anymore. So
would they still be sentenced to SHINE, or would they be sentenced to community service, and then it would be up to Grant and his team to determine whether they're going into SHINE or some other community service?
as far as the judges sentencing to SHINE, that would not change.
Okay, thank you.
What was it? I'm sorry, what was the administrative order you referenced?
Well, there was one that was entered last week, and I'm trying to recall. It has to do with being qualified or accepted into the program. In other words, there's certain requirements to be eligible for the program. And basically, if someone was going into community sentence or SHINE, they were both doing the same kind of acceptance form, for lack of it. I'm not using the correct terminology. I'm not seeing the administrative order in my head right now. And Grant may be able to help with this, but basically it was so that a person being sentenced to community sentencing or SHINE could do one set of paperwork and be eligible for both. And so that's why I didn't know if, by putting it in community services, if it was going to be sentenced to SHINE or sentenced to community service, or if SHINE came, you see what I'm saying? Would it be a separate sentence as it is now, or would SHINE simply be an option for community service then to say you're going to do the SHINE program versus another program?
From what I understand, as it stands, the judge can take it upon themselves to sentence them directly to SHINE, and that will not change.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other discussion?
My motion had no effective date. I think there's a valid point in discussing what the effective date should be. Did you have you wanted effective immediately?
We had discussion about making it effective the next payroll period, which would be the 21st.
I'm a little confused, Renee. Grant. Now, the way there's a community sentencing aspect to your office today without Shine, right?
Right, community service, yeah.
Community service, okay. And how does that work, and where do those individuals come from, and where do they serve?
So basically, a judge orders that someone's convicted, a judge orders an individual to a certain amount of hours of community service. They have a completion date.
Okay.
Many times on that order, it'll say to do at Shine. So obviously they go to Shine. If it doesn't say anything, then we would send them to Shine as a first place to go to. But a lot of it depends on, there's a lot of issues with medical problems or different things where they can't do that. So we would find the appropriate place to send them to.
Because
And the administrative order there was one before, and it just slightly changed it. And so really it's two different things, whether or not Shine's under court services or not. The participant, the person who's convicted and gets the hours of community service would still, the function would be the same. They would still come over. There's no different paperwork, change in paperwork. Everything is the same. It's just one of the things changes, for instance, is the individuals in treatment courts, it would be an automatic qualifier.
So go back to the medical issues. So
Okay.
you have a screening questionnaire that you utilize?
Well, because it is manual labor, so if they have, say, a doctor's note or something of that aspect that says they can't perform manual labor, then we obviously wouldn't send them there because that's what it is.
And how does that work with a judicial order saying?
We contact them and let them know and make sure they're fully aware that what your order says, this is what's happening, and it's a process that we work through
And then you assign them
to the appropriate
some other place.
place to go to. Right.
Okay. Right. And so other places that people are assigned used to be the zoo, I think. It's public properties.
The zoo, thrift store.
A thrift store, okay.
There's other places we have.
Yeah, don't take my questions. You guys have been doing this for so long, to not think that the program is worthy. I think it is worthy, but if the goal is to ensure its future success, I think that we need to all be on the same page. I have some question as to whether we're all there right now. And I don't see rushing something that's been done for, what'd you say, 12 years? Today, or at the upcoming BOCC meeting, when we could wait until July 1, give Grant and his team an opportunity to really get in there, understand what they're being asked to do, ask questions. I am concerned about the budgetary aspect. I understand that there have been some groups that have stepped up to the plate and donated some funds. But if those donations go away, or the entities that we currently have contracts with decide to do a similar program themselves, then that funding source goes away. And as you mentioned, the court-ordered fees are nominal. So we need to be fully apprised of what potential impact they may have going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a 7/1 implementation date allows us to have a little more time to look at this. But
Okay. Well, we actually have a motion and a second already on the table.
and I'm moving to amend that to a 7/1 date.
Did you want to amend your original motion?
No.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
One last question. The people that are being transferred over, they will report to Grant. He's their supervisor.
He is the supervisor's supervisor. So we have people,
He's either the supervisor or he's not.
so we have our employees that supervise the community service workers. those people report to the designated supervisor in Grant's office, and who I believe is Nicole, correct?
Right, so
And so he is Nicole's supervisor.
just to make clear, it would be Nicole, first line
Yes.
supervisor, not any current Shine employee.
Right.
As we speak.
Right.
So the five employees that are being transferred over,
hmm
they will work for Grant?
They are working in Grant's department, yes.
No.
Yeah,
They will work for Grant. Grant is the director of court service,
Yes.
of which we're now making this a part of court services.
Yes.
So Grant is the director, and he would be the supervisor of all of those employees.
Yes.
So it has nothing to do with your employees.
Yes.
Okay, so your statement that your employees would report to, I don't remember her name,
It was Nicole.
Nicole, and they would report to Nicole, but not to Grant.
Yeah, Nicole's in community service, in court service now, so she's the, and if I understand this correctly, Shine is going into community service, right? It's not gonna be a
Right.
third department, it will be,
Rolled into
is
community
this, the
service.
discussion will be rolled into that, which is where Nicole is the supervisor of, and then I'm
Right.
her supervisor, so.
Right.
Ultimately, though, at the end of the day, then.
Everybody that works
I'm the
in court
supervisor of that.
services, you're their supervisor, whether or not they have a line supervisor.
Correct.
That's what I'm asking. All these people will be directly supervised by Grant.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
Oh, I voted for it.
And mine's still kind of sitting.
Okay, so it looks like we can go back up to agenda item number 2. Discussion and possible action regarding policies, processes, and procedures related to planning, oversight, and administration of Oklahoma County's ARPA funding.
Hi, good morning. And
Good
before
morning.
we get into that, I understand there might be a time constraint on some of the other
Okay.
speakers.
Do you prefer we skip down to agenda item number 5?
But that is the, if I recall correctly, that's the approved
Current
projects. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so let's move on down to agenda item number 5, if we could, please. Discussion and possible action regarding approved projects and or programs undertaken by a VOCC.
Perfect. All right, I'm going to skip to that due to the time constraints we have going on. So each of your offices should already be aware of this topic of discussion. What this is related to is the detention center reimbursements. The way that the risk assessment was fulfilled by the detention center made them a medium risk entity as a subrecipient. As a medium risk or as a high risk, any subrecipients in Oklahoma County are only going to be eligible for a reimbursement basis for ARPA dollars. We, as a team, included some of the capital projects in the subrecipient agreement as okay, when you complete these projects, we will be able to reimburse you with the ARPA funds as an eligible use. There is now a concern about the cash flow piece of that because the department doesn't feel like they can come up with the dollars in order to implement the capital projects. And I know that the county has some constraints as well in relation to that funding. So this kind of breaks down the things to be aware of in this conversation. So for true reimbursements, this includes things like COVID testing, PPE equipment. They're going to get $1.1 million in true reimbursements. Those are things that can be issued within the next couple of weeks very quickly. We've got documentation on that, and that begins to open up some of the cash flow. And it could cover about 3 of their projects. If you were to take project roof replacement, if you were to take the loading dock updates and sealing the existing metal roof, all of those combined could be covered with the $1 million that they'll receive in true reimbursement. So that could kind of help them begin those projects. But we do kind of run into a standing point when we think about the HVAC or the network upgrades because they are a larger cost, and they, nor the county, feel like they can maybe front those. We have spoken with the department. There was conversation yesterday between some of the offices about maybe there are pieces of the HVAC or the network upgrades that wouldn't have to be implemented all at once, which could help with the cash flow piece as well. After speaking with the department, they feel that that is not necessarily a viable option to not do it as a whole, but I can let them speak to that if you would like more information. So this is kind of, we're just bringing this forward to see, you know, how do we want to process this? Who do we want to work with? Who do y'all want us to work with to get this financial cash flow process kind of figured out, determined how to move forward with it? And there are some members of the jail here today, detention center, to talk through this as well as needed. And don't necessarily have to solve that today, just making sure we get the right points of contact and can have those conversations.
So essentially, you need to sit down and start having some conversations with the points of contact to help determine as to a priority list or alternative funding or what have you to bridge this gap of the $3.485 million.
Correct.
As far as the 1.1, the reimbursement projects total, is that available to go towards these other capital projects at this time?
So it has not been issued to the detention center yet, but can be issued within, like I said, the next couple of weeks and could be used at that point immediately, yes.
Okay. So taking that 1.1 and then just really taking a look at what we have here to work with. I know we have a couple of points of contact in the audience. I see Interim Director Brandy Gardner, and then we also have Senator Ben Brown from the Jail Trust. Just thinking that those might be initial points of contact, at least right now, to get the conversation going. Mm-hmm. I know there's some situations that are kind of fluid with all of that, but perhaps they might be your initial points of contact to kind of work through some of these things and determine a priority list, you know, what they're going to do with the 1.1 that they're going to get, and then any alternative funding that may or may not be needed, just determining on what they decide is a priority. Would that be helpful for what you need right now?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a great point of contact with the detention center related to project specifics and specs and things like that. So we're just looking for the finance kind of side of things. So yeah, I think that would be great and very helpful.
Okay. Any other discussion on this aspect?
So on the, I can't recall the specifics of some of these projects. Mm-hmm. On the HVAC. Mm-hmm. I may be wrong, but I thought we addressed most, if not all, of the HVAC issues utilizing CARES funding. So I can't recall what this specific
So they did, my understanding, if I can recall, I would need to bring up all of my notes again. They did get a new HVAC system through CARES dollars, but now because of some of the leaking in the roofs and things like that, there is damage that is occurring to the HVAC system. My understanding as well is this would help with like the sizing and balancing, making sure the controls are connected to the right places. Currently, they're not necessarily associated to the appropriate rooms and things like that as well. I think this would also include some of the damper replacement and ventilation pieces as well. I'd have to pull up the project specifics to get a little more detailed.
Do you recall, and maybe this is a question better for the facilities team over there, kind of the time frames in terms of installation, go live, et cetera? Obviously, it sounds like the roof would need to be an immediate need. Mm-hmm. And as you pointed out, if they take their reimbursement and begin to tick off those projects there that you've identified as medium risk, then we can have some churn. Mm-hmm. Because they have until 24 to encumber.
Yeah, to have a PO.
26
mm-hmm.
to complete these projects. Okay. And then given that we've got an RFP out for location of a potential jail, I believe they're putting together an RFP on an architect, et cetera, whether or not it might be worthy to revisit some of these requests in terms of that time frame that they would be completed versus a new jail opening, whether or not those types of things would be able to be transported to the new facility. I understand the testing and balancing a little bit, but I think also some of that can be manually done as well. Not an expert. I wish he was here. I don't see.
Mandy? Yeah, I was gonna say, I think Mandy probably knows a little bit more than I do.
Morning.
Good morning.
I can speak to it a little bit. So the heat and air system, it was replaced in, I believe, 2019. We've been saying it was CARES Act, but we've reviewed our notes and I don't believe it was CARES Act money. So it was replaced, and that highlighted some other issues that we were unaware of before we went through the whole revamp of the system. We were unable to find out what wasn't working until we got some of it working. And so once we got everything replaced, it highlighted some areas like the balancing that needs to be done, the sensors that are in the wrong locations so that we're not able to properly control the temperatures from the computer. Not being able to properly ventilate and control the temperatures has led to an increase in humidity, which is rusting everything out. And so that is the need for the dampers. That was not a need 2 years ago. But now that we've waited, more things are starting to fail and collapse and get stuck. And so that's where we are right now, is needing to replace all of the dampers in the facility. Just this week, we were made aware of a motor that had gone out. So it's continually, we're continually having failures and dropping below jail standards in some areas. Right now, it's not any areas that house inmates, but it will get there eventually.
Mandy, is there, given the constraints that it appears that we have financially, both for the county and for the authority, is it conceivable that you all could come up with a plan to churn that 1.1 over in order to tick these off the list? As soon as it's completed, you get a reimbursement and then go on to the next thing. For instance, you could take the roof, the loading dock, and then can you parcel out and do in phases some of the HVAC or some of the network upgrades so that you're able to?
So the 1.1, as that reimbursement comes in, that's going right back into our general fund. We don't have the ability to reinvest that into other ARPA projects, just based on my understanding of where our financials sit right now. As far as kind of piecemealing the projects.
So if you weren't getting the $1.1 million in reimbursement, you wouldn't make it through the FY?
Since I'm not the CFO, I don't want to speak to
Ms.
that.
Garner, would you like to speak? Good morning.
Hey, thank you.
Afternoon.
Coming up.
So I'm still wrapping my arms around the budget. Obviously, I'm still trying to figure out what's what, but I can tell you that right now, if we were not to receive the reimbursement, we're facing a $1.6 million deficit at the end of the year.
So it is your intention to take this reimbursement project's total of the 1.1 and roll it into your general fund, not roll it into this and be able to apply it to the remaining capital projects.
Right. We have no option but to use it to sustain us to the end of the year.
Okay. So that was different from what we had anticipated, right, Danielle?
So this methodology is something we constructed as a team to try and help assist with the cash flow issue, not knowing there is a
Okay, I see.
This was just that, this might be an option to get some things moving
Mhm.
in the interim.
Okay, I see.
But this is why we wanted to get connected to have these types of conversations of maybe that's not a viable option.
Right.
As much as I wish it was, it's not.
Okay. So it seems to me that perhaps it would be useful to have that point of contact to sit down and have these conversations and really ultimately determine, what's needed versus what can be applied and that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think the overarching concern is potential $500,000 shortfall.
Right.
Agreed.
So at this point, then the MOU that was passed is just not going to take effect because neither entity has the funds to.
It can still work for the reimbursement pieces, because those are true in nature. They've our expenses that have already gone out the door. The PPE's already been purchased. The COVID testing's already been purchased. So for the 1.1, the subrecipient agreement, the MOU can stand, because those pieces aren't changing. And if anyone were to find the capital to do the capital projects, that could still occur, right? They could still be reimbursed for them if the county would like to continue in that way. We can certainly re-amend the subrecipient agreement and MOU for just the true reimbursements at this time, as these other conversations are ongoing. But the nature and the integrity of the agreement itself is still viable and okay. Some things just may not actually happen.
Okay. Yeah.
You had mentioned dividing up the projects to be able to do a little bit at a time. I think as far as the facilities projects go, I think the only one that we have that option on would be the loading dock updates. But because of the size of that project, it does have to go out to bid. It's already gone out to bid. We would be designing a new bid packet for every step of the process,
Right.
which would end up costing us a lot of money.
Right.
And then we're also paying for the contractors to come out multiple times.
It wouldn't be
versus
cost
one.
effective to break it out.
That is my belief, yes.
Yeah.
That is the only one that I see as a possibility of doing parts at a time, though. And we did just this weekend have another door fail for that project. So right now we have 2 doors that are completely down out of 4. So that one's a pretty dire need.
Well, I think the total that we would need to front fund you in order to be reimbursed exceeds what we have available in our reserve account. Is that accurate? And now hearing that there's the potential for additional funds, that you're facing a shortfall, even with the reimbursement, as necessary as these projects may be, I don't know that we can move forward. We just don't have the funds right now. You don't have the funds right now. And it sounds like there needs to be some serious conversations regarding the overall budget. Okay.
So at this time, would it still benefit the opportunity to kind of sit down and discuss some of these things, Danielle?
I think so.
Okay.
Because there may still be opportunity on these things. I don't think we're at a point necessarily yet where we have to completely shut them down, but are potentially getting close to that, especially with deadlines and things like that. So I think it's definitely viable to have those conversations and then think through too, the county facility, who owns that? Will it become a PBA property? Is it, things like that as well that might change some of the discussions going forward. So I think it would be still very beneficial, yes.
Okay. Well, I understand the bottom line here, but I would hate to just throw in the towel at this point. So
Sure.
It would be nice to, know that every avenue and opportunity was exhausted, having you get connected with the proper contacts, to just kind of vet those out and just see if there's any other options available.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that there's still an opportunity to have a discussion on how to move forward.
Okay. Any other discussion on this slide? Okay.
We'll have an update then next time.
Okay.
On the detention center.
Perfect. Thank you.
And thank y'all for being here today. I'm going to pass it back to Stephen for a minute.
Yeah, I think we can return to agenda item 2 if that's how that works.
Okay. Is there anything else we needed to discuss associated with agenda item number 5?
Not on our radar.
Okay.
Unless there was any.
Okay, perfect.
Projects that are moving are good.
Okay.
Those are in
Perfect.
action, so I think we're good.
Okay, so then let's jump up to agenda item number 2.
All right, yeah, so just in terms of policy, procedure, processes for the way we're running this ARPA program, just a quick update on the way that we're presenting our project status and our work plan that Danny is about to walk through. And just want to cover conceptually what we're doing here. You've heard some of this before, so I think what we want to do is just kind of tighten up some of the processes that we've been running, some of which have been kind of informal on the side, where we follow up on P&G meetings with here's what happened, here's what we think is going to happen next, et cetera. And just building that into our work plan within this meeting, and where we have the project status that's sort of backward looking and what we've been doing since we talked to you last. We want to start looking forward as well and planning out what we're going to do in the meantime, leading up to the next P&G meeting, just to keep everyone aligned and on the same page, and that we're all singing from the same sheet of music.
Perfect.
So just at a high level, that's what you're about to see in terms of our project status update. And that's really all I have for agenda item 2, unless there are any questions.
I don't have any. Is there any discussion?
Questions on premium pay? Is that on this slide or?
We do have a talking point about it, I believe, 1 or 2 slides.
Wouldn't that be item 5, premium pay?
Yeah, that's right.
So we can reopen agenda item number 5.
Okay. So with that, we'll move to 3, I think, for the project
Okay,
status.
perfect. Moving on to agenda item number 3, project status report.
Yeah, so this is just kind of going in line with what Stephen was talking about on making sure everyone is up to date on kind of the work plan and the things that are moving behind the scenes that not everyone is always aware of. So to start us off, we have the community portal that we're super excited about. As most everyone knows, we're doing the D2 and D3 community engagement sessions this week. And that is going to lead into the community portal going live for applications. It's going to go live. The intent is on Friday. Currently, the portal is in the testing phase. We've been working with IT though, and they feel confident that we'll be able to migrate it over into a go live by Friday. If that changes, we will certainly let you know. But that is the intent, and then it will be hosted on the county webpage for applications. So we're very excited about that. Second, we have the PBA risk assessment. This is going to be the other subrecipient within the county, and this will be relevant for the elevator project, some of the security camera updates. We have completed the initial review of that. It's getting a little bit of tweaks to it, and will be returned back to us so we can create the subrecipient agreement, anticipating a low level of risk to be the determination on this risk assessment. Another positive highlight is the quarterly P&E report from last month. That was submitted. It was due January 31st. We got it in on the 10th. So that tracks all of the spending that has gone on thus far. So anything that has a PO to date would have been in that report up to January. Also, we have some changes going on with the Emergency Management Operations Center, and that they are now going to stay at the Krause building. So we have worked with the department. David did a wonderful job of getting us a comparison. So that's part of the written justification that's required when it comes to a capital expenditure like this. You have to kind of compare 3 different entities and why the investment that you're choosing is the best option. So we have worked with their department. He's put that together for us so we can move forward comfortably with that justification as well. Any questions on this slide?
Just a question in
Yeah.
general. For a lot of our projects that require written justification, are we in a pretty good place there in terms of getting the information that's needed, or are you having difficulty?
We're in a good place, especially with our internal departments. They have been very responsive. We are working still, and we have a little, it's number 5. We are still working on the written justification for the behavioral health facility. Since conversations we had with some of your offices yesterday, we've had some movement on that even since then. We will be meeting with Mr. Tardibono on Thursday. We had previously, as y'all know, provided a framework for what the mental health justification should look like, the important things to highlight, and the 3 other options to kind of clarify on and things like that. So all of the important pieces that have to be boxed up together. So hopefully on Thursday when we're able to connect with him, we'll be able to get that really filled out and nailed down. As I know there's conversations ongoing on, starting that construction and wanting to get to it immediately. Our understanding, he's going to work to pull in a mental health provider and a medical provider to help with some of those conversations as well, to make sure we're highlighting the best services that the county will be able to be providing.
And that's just a conceptual
Right.
conversation,
right.
not pulling in an actual provider.
Right. There's no like method of payment or anything like that going on, no. So we're excited to have that still moving, and we'll get that more nailed out on Thursday, and can certainly update you after those conversations as well. That leads us into, we hosted some requisitioning trainings for departments over the past 2 weeks. So we let all the department heads know, it's time to kind of get your money if you want it. Let's get those processes rolling so everyone can start implementing their projects. So we hosted those so that anybody who had questions on how to go about that was able to address those with us. And if we weren't able to maybe get them the 100% correct answer, we were able to pull in Chantel for conversations like that as well. So that should help the departments feel more comfortable in that PO process moving forward. Moving into number 7 is the community session planning. We touched on this a little bit when we were talking about the community portal. So like I said, we'll have the D2 and D3 sessions this week, which we're really excited about. And we will use that time to show people the portal, what the questions are going to look like in the portal. If they have questions about those questions, we'll definitely address them at that time as well. So the D2 session will be at the Bethany Library at 6, and then the D3 one will be at the Admin Library at 6:30. So that information is also hosted on the county website, and it's on the county calendar. So those are good places to point people as well. And then the very last one is the premium pay. If we need to change agenda items, let me know. But our update on that is we have sent out the request to departments for their information from each of their offices regarding premium pay. So this is eligible employees, yes or no type of situation, and then their current rate of pay. So we've received that from maybe a third of the departments and are working to get the rest of those in.
So I do know that there were some questions about some of the ways that the premium pay was either structured or set up, or the parameters in which someone will qualify.
Sure.
And so I do know that you had sent out an email last week offering some clarification on some of that, which I appreciate, because I wasn't part of the conversations that policy and governance had over a pretty extended period of time, setting up the parameters based on, final rule of law and things like that. So I appreciate that you took the time to send that out. Although I don't know if we have some ongoing questions related to that.
Yeah, it sounds like we might. And to your point, premium pay it is something that has been talked about basically from the beginning of our ARPA conversations. And it was nailed down in December by the current P&G chairs, and then by BOCC to do a 1-month stipend based on current rates of pay. That was one of 3 options that was previously presented. And so that was the one that was moved forward with after kind of assessing 3 different viable options. And like I said, it's a conversation that's been ongoing for quite some time. Something to highlight that the sheriff's office has continually advocated for their department for the maximum amount of premium pay, and that's not the direction that the county went for. We are using a unilateral system across the board to try and maintain that. But so there has been a lot of opportunity for people to advocate for their departments, and we really appreciate that. But we're happy to answer any remaining questions.
Okay. So you mentioned that the pay was based on the person's current salary.
Correct.
Because I know that was, some of the questions was based on current salary versus the salary in which they were making at the time frame of, this occurrence.
Right.
And just refresh my memory, just because I wasn't part of that conversation. Was that because the current rate of pay is greater?
Yes.
Okay. And so it was just more of a benefit.
Right.
More or less.
Right.
Okay. And then as far as the one-time stipend that you had mentioned, there were some questions about everybody being eligible versus only certain people targeted to be eligible. Certainly they had to work within the parameters of the dates that were established.
Right.
Beyond that, I know that you had mentioned in your email that there was I guess, a salary cap.
Mm-hmm.
Where was that salary cap determined from?
So the 150% calculation comes from the Treasury Department. So the intent behind premium pay is really for low to moderate income workers. It's really to benefit those individuals versus those that might be making more. So that comes directly out of final rule from the Treasury Department. There was a caveat for written justifications for those that would exceed that threshold, but that is not something that the county pursued forward with.
Okay.
So if you were above that cap, meant you were above the low to moderate income and were not considered for premium pay.
Okay. Was there any other discussion related to the bullet point number 8, the county department premium pay?
Not 8, but back to the portal.
Okay.
We've consistently asked and advocated that we do some type of video for those. Will we be able to have that ready to go with the launch of the portal as well?
I don't know that it will be ready on Friday, but we will get one posted next to the video on the website, or a video posted to the link on the website.
Okay. And it'd be a general overview of ARPA, what's permissible, what's not, and then a little bit about how to fill out the application and what to expect going forward.
Yeah, I'm envisioning them being separate. One about here's how to use the portal, and then one that's like here's how ARPA works.
And you mentioned this, and we thought it was a good idea yesterday. Do we need to have on the application, perhaps it's already there, some kind of notice that if they do not fill out the application completely, it's just done?
Yeah, and it is on there. It is a disclaimer, and that's something to be aware of as you talk with constituency or as people ask questions. If an application is considered incomplete and doesn't have all of the viable information to make a determination, we're gonna say it's not an eligible application.
Very good.
All right. So that's all the things that we have been doing or are wrapping up. These are the things moving forward. Like I had already mentioned, we'll get that PBA subrecipient agreement pumped out very quickly after getting the risk assessment back. So no concerns there at this time. We are getting ready to launch the community portal, and we have flagged it, as you have just noted, the communications piece of that being important, making sure people understand what ARPA is and isn't, and then how to apply for those funds. Our goal is also to get each of you some promotional flyers or social media posts that you can use to let people know, hey, here's where to go, here's the link for the portal. So we're really excited about that as well. We will begin intaking proposals as soon as they come in. We'll start reviewing and going through that process ASAP. At this time, we don't know what that will look like. We don't know if we'll have 100 or 1,000 applicants. So those things will be fluid and will change, and we'll update you as we get that information each week like we do in our weekly statuses. But that's something that we're excited to move forward with as well. Something we also are looking forward to in the future is updating the recovery plan. This is an annual requirement that has to be done by January 31st, and it is something Joe has mentioned before, wanting to make sure that it gets up to date. Definitely on our radar, and any of the expenditures that have occurred will go into that report and will be public facing, so constituents can look at it. The Treasury Department will see it. All of those things will get submitted as well. As we were just discussing before this, the detention center capital projects is an ongoing conversation. We are excited about that, and we are hopeful to kind of help find an avenue to make those projects come to life. And then ongoing, as always, working with each of the departments, monitoring compliance, doing research that offices may need done, and things like that. So this is kind of the look ahead. We just went through what's been done, but these are the things that we're processing forward with. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns?
Any discussion?
Not on this one.
All right.
Motion to receive.
Second.
Are you finished?
We've got like 2 more slides, but we will definitely send these to y'all, no problem. That was kind of like the immediate look ahead. This is a longer term look ahead. A lot of it is very similar to what we just discussed, talking about triaging community applications as they come in, refining those proposals, submitting the P&E report, and then presenting the proposals to you all, awarding the projects, and things like that as well. So this all goes in line with what we talked about. That's just a shorter view. It does lead into our final outstanding questions we have about the community portal. The first one being, would you guys be interested in time boxing that? That way we can go ahead and say this is how many days or weeks are available to fill out the application. If you don't get it in at that time, the portal will be closed, and then that will allow us to make sure that we can get them presented at one of the P&G meetings in a time constraint that is appropriate. We're thinking about 4 to 6 weeks, really about 4 weeks, but looking for you guys' guidance on what would be best.
Any discussion on the deadline? What, remind me, what was the deadline for the internal portion?
Ongoing.
Yeah. Well, I do know it eventually closed.
It did. It was months. That was probably 6 months. That was not the original intent, but things
Sure.
did continue to pop up that we wanted to address. Little stragglers here and there, which is totally fine. So that was a several months long. We wouldn't want to wait that long, I don't think, with the community.
Right. I certainly understand the need to kind of, tighten that up, at least to a certain extent. How do you all feel about a 4-week period?
Is that your recommendation?
It is.
I'm comfortable with that. 4 weeks from the time we go live.
Yeah.
I didn't see it. Maybe you touched on it, Danielle. Once the portal's open, we've received all the applications, then a review process of some type will begin to take shape. Are you all planning on making some types of recommendations regarding avenues we might take there at a future meeting?
So we will do a very initial culling of them for eligibility. So like I said, it's going to be very fluid because we don't know what to expect and how many applicants we will receive. So if we receive 50, obviously we're able to have those conversations a lot faster and get things out the door quicker. If we have 1,000, it becomes a little more complicated. So we're envisioning the first step is an eligibility cut. So we're going to review all of the applications, say this flies, this meets final rule, these do not, and kind of get a separation there. And then we can see how many that leaves. And if that means that we're able to bring each of them to P&G to review and consider, that's great. Or if we have to come up with some sort of ranking or measurement system for them as well, that's something that can be determined at that time. It's a little hard to say right now just because we don't know what the capacity will look like.
Once we kind of have that idea, though, you could potentially bring us 3 different options for evaluating.
Yeah.
We would do like we did with the internal, and we would recommend them to BOCC and then up, or you all would vet them all and make recommendations based upon community impact, et cetera.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that, and we can structure some of that based on what you guys might be interested in. That leads really good, I think, into this proposal scope piece that's on this slide. Like I said, and as it calls out, it's very unknown what the volume of funding applicants may look like. So if you're interested at this time, and you don't have to, we could say, do we want to set a threshold or a maximum amount that an entity could receive? We're not saying that you should or that you don't have to or anything like that, but it's something to consider. You could set a maximum. No one will receive more than $1 million. That's arbitrary, but it's something to think about. You could also consider, are we only going to do assistance to individuals, or are we going to do only nonprofits or small businesses? Something you can think about as well. So there's different ways when we get to that point of how many have we received? How do we want to kind of decide moving forward? Or is it service-based? Is it because we want to focus on homelessness and mental health that those would be the applicants that we would prioritize more? These are things we can definitely talk about today, but I don't think necessarily have to be nailed down today. But things to think about dependent upon how much is received.
Right.
So are other communities doing their process organically like that, where based on applicants, they're then reanalyzing what the analytics will be for determining award?
So in a lot of the other counties that we are looking at, a lot of the times the priorities have been set on the front side. So it would say, okay, we want to focus specifically on mental health and on homelessness, and then you would only accept applicants that were relevant to those 2 fields. Currently, Oklahoma County has not designated specific need sources or avenues that are preferred over one or another. So right now we're taking everything unless we get direction otherwise, which we will take.
Kind of been using those broad categories outlined within the act itself as those buckets, if you will. So.
And do you anticipate any type of appeal or review process by the applicant? Do they get do you anticipate there'll be an opportunity because you mentioned earlier that if my application misses a blank, I'm not to be considered? There's not a back and forth of you're rejected because, or.
At this time, there is not. If we had an applicant that we needed more information from, but the proposal itself looked like it had good integrity, we'll absolutely reach out and say, hey, we're missing this one little piece. Can you get that to us so we can evaluate it as a whole? What we're really thinking about when we're saying like we're going to reject an application for not being fulfilled is if there's 5 TBDs or NAs or not sure, if there's really not been the right level of effort on the front side. If someone has done a really good job and there's one question, of course, that they weren't able to answer, absolutely, we will reach out. But if a third or a half of the application is not particularly viable, we at this time are not intending to reach out and say, please refill your application.
But what is the back and forth with an applicant who's disgruntled in some way? What's the anticipated review or appeal type process?
So we will collect all of their contact information. So we would be reaching out to them to get extra information. If they have a issue with the selection process or anything like that, I think that would end up ultimately falling to the county's decision-making authority versus our own.
But right now, your proposal is to create a framework post receipt of the applications.
Unless you would like to designate categories today, and then we can box those categories, which we're happy to do. If there's specific areas of need that you guys would like to prioritize, that's totally fine. We've seen, based off of the survey we have hosted, and then from what the one community engagement session we have been able to do, using our Menti polls, using the survey, pulling those data points, we are seeing that the 2 highest perceived needs is in homelessness and in mental health. Those are the things that we're gathering from the community, but that is ultimately y'all's decision to make.
Well, I like what Joe had mentioned as far as the different buckets that we've kind of worked within, the 7 that we have listed here.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like personally that's a good framework to kind of base that on.
Okay. And in reality, that will narrow some too, because 6 is only going to be used by the county because that's revenue replacement. So no one will be applying
Right.
for revenue replacement.
Right.
And then 7 will typically only be used by the county as well as an administrative piece. So that really just leaves the 1 to 5. And
Yes.
really premium pay is mostly an internal thing as well.
Mhm.
So that does begin to narrow things down a little bit as well.
Okay. Any other discussion? We do have a motion and a second to receive report. So
Absolutely.
all those in favor say aye. Aye. All right.
And then I'm not sure if there was a vote or if it's needed for the 4-week portal timeline. I know it was discussed.
Okay. Would we have a motion to recommend to limit the open portal for a 4-week period as we discussed?
So moved.
Okay. Do we have a motion and we have a second?
Sure.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 So is that, as program manager, I think we can make that determination. I want to just see where I'm going with this. So you said recommendation. So we're going to recommend to the board that we limit it, because if we are making a recommendation to the board, then that's going to delay when the portal's open until we know. So
I'm more or less meant a recommendation to the consultants.
Okay.
To
That's
go
fine.
ahead and
Yeah.
proceed.
just making sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good with us. Unless you guys have other questions about the community portal or anything else we've discussed, that does wrap us up.
Okay, so nothing for agenda item number 4.
I don't believe so.
Okay, and I had previously mentioned possibly opening up agenda item number 5 again, to entertain any more discussion about premium pay.
Yep.
Okay, so do we have any other questions related to premium pay information?
So you all, I can't remember if it was you, Danielle, or Stephen, someone said you'd received about a third of the responses from county. would it be beneficial if we were to set some type of drop deadline here?
I think it could help, and then it allows the county to know if they have funds left over from premium pay or not. And it may encourage the departments who haven't been necessarily worried about it. I know sometimes P&G things can run, and ARPA's been running a long time, so I know that sometimes it just gets a little complacent. So I don't think that that's the worst idea in the world, no.
And how long have people been aware of this and this conversation? You said it's been quite a while that this conversation's been ongoing. Right?
Premium pay in general has been an ongoing conversation for a while. At the last the December P&G meeting is when the determination of how the funding was going to go about occurred. So we emailed people in January probably for that. I would say anywhere between 2 to 4 weeks is a good timeline.
Okay, so March 1, in February, March 1?
Sure.
Okay. That would be my motion, that if departments, the county doesn't have the information necessary to the consultants to continue moving forward with the premium pay, that they're out of luck.
And we'll email the departments and let them know that that's the drop dead.
Okay. All right. So
Make it March 1.
March 1.
Yep.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion carries. All right. Any other discussion?
Morning. I think some of us have some questions on the premium pay, just as far as the guidelines of what we're gathering. The current pay, we supplied the payroll for as of June, and so that's what everybody was working off of until we got the email saying current pay. So I don't know if there was ever a, formal vote or, that we were going to use current pay. And using like current pay, that's where the COLA has been added for this time. And what about employees that as of June, during the 15 months that they were eligible for the premium pay, but now that we're using current pay, they're not eligible?
How many is that potentially impacting? Is it?
I do know at least in, I believe, the emergency management department, it excludes their entire department with the increased pay.
What department? I'm sorry.
I think it's emergency management. They had 2 employees that would have been eligible, and with the increase, it did exclude them. So I can't speak for the county as a whole, though. I don't know that as a whole.
And so just to clarify again, the reason why it was determined previously to do current pay after the COLA was just to give the employee the benefit of having a little bit more.
Right.
And by doing so,
some may not get
some are getting excluded.
Even though they worked during the 15 months that, they should be eligible for it.
I thought he was coming up to say something. Okay. Well, any discussion to that end?
And I know the 1 month pay was decided, but I don't know that it had ever been formally set by the board that it would be current pay versus the original payroll that was sent to them for the June payroll.
I know when it was voted on at BOCC, the 5.7 and some change, did that number include figures that would be determined by current pay?
So that was based on the information we received from the clerk's office from June.
So that wasn't current pay?
It's not current pay.
Okay.
Because we had been supplying all of the numbers for the premium pay was as for June.
So if we were to actually do it per current pay, would then that exceed that 5.7?
No, and it's flipped. It's 7.5.
Oh, 7.5. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I don't believe it will exceed it to the point, unfortunately, that is being made. Some people are no longer going to be eligible, and some people have left the department since then anyway. Some of the people on our list don't work in the county anymore.
Right, right. Okay. So essentially, we'd be giving many employees a little bit more money, but then also by doing that, we would be excluding some people.
Yeah, it's not a perfect system.
Right, right.
So, just so I understand, the BOCC already adopted a position policy here with a certain
Yes.
fiscal analysis, and we are updating that or tweaking it?
We're not tweaking it, we're just discussing. Just, I think more for clarification purposes.
We went off which numbers?
We had received numbers from the clerk's office that were from June, but we also created a while back, it's something that was presented at that time, an equity-based approach that was a percentage approach versus everyone gets whatever their current rate of pay is.
Right.
It was a percentage approach. So even with percentage approach and the model that we built out for that, we don't have a concern about the change in numbers with current rate of pay because the model we built maintains that the numbers are not going to be that different.
Okay.
I'm confused.
It's
So
so weird
we built this proposal off of our June 30 numbers, which did not include a COLA, correct? What is the harm in going off the June 30 numbers in order to do the premium pay?
We just have to go back to all the departments again.
Well, but you have the numbers, because you've got the payroll report for all the salaries.
Well, we're hearing from departments that not everything we receive is necessarily 100% correct.
We can take the June data and work from that, and we'll just validate that with the departments just to make sure we got the right names and the right.
Because that's the original, that June 30th is the original numbers we worked off and made the recommendation to the board based on, correct? So we could work off those numbers.
Yeah, we can do that.
So to Dawn's comment though, are we making changes?
So I'm asking, are we remaking the wheel? Do we have an existing motion that was approved in BOCC on whatever date? I don't know when that was, and we're simply discussing how to administer it?
Well, I think if we were to,
Or do we have the ability to alter? So I'm hearing a substantive alteration, and maybe I just don't understand.
I think what I'm talking about is what the BOCC based their approval on,
Decision
right?
on.
The June 30, that the number, the 7.5 was built off the June 30 number, correct?
And it just runs parallel with what we had created internally as a projection.
And then as this thing kind of, as we move forward looking at this, then they began to look at current rate of pay. But if we go back to that June 30 number, then I think we're in a good place with what the board,
in line with what BOCC had
I
approved.
believe so, yes.
Yeah, I would amend then, I guess it doesn't necessarily need an amendment, but I would retract the first deadline because we'll have to go
Right.
back to departments again now to request new information.
End of March, you think satisfactory? Carrie? Yeah. Because you said, Carrie, they have the June 30 numbers.
Yes, they have.
And it's a
June
matter
30
then
numbers,
of
And the departments will just need to remove employees that are not eligible based on working from home or not employed
not employed
anymore.
anymore.
Yeah.
So those that are on the payroll and eligible as of June 30 would get the premium pay.
Right.
Which I think was the intent. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we were still following with that. The intent had trying to give a little bit more, and then there's unintended consequences.
Sure, I understand. Okay,
But yeah,
Well-
we'll recollect.
okay.
And then one more, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So if during the 15-month eligibility period, the board did vote to do the 1 month pay, the ones working from home during that time, though, if they worked 1 month, is that what you're, yeah. So they're saying if they worked 1 month, they would be eligible for that 1 month pay, even though the employees that were working 15 months are getting that 1 month pay. Just want to make sure that that's what everybody is saying and doing, so that we don't have any departments that
Right.
calculate
Right.
differently.
Yeah, anyone who worked during that time for at least a month that wasn't permanently from home and still permanently at home is eligible. So if you worked for 1 month or you worked for 6 months, you are eligible for the 1 month stipend, as long as you as long as you are not permanently working from home and can say that you would have worked in office during those times for at least a month's worth of time.
At least a month's worth of time.
Right.
Okay.
And that was what was discussed, what you just said was what was discussed when this was approved.
Yeah. So originally, when we first approached Premium Pay, because it's been an ongoing thing, when we were talking about if everyone were to receive the maximum amount, we were trying to suss out with departments who worked from home and
Right.
for how long did they work from home, because there's not a designator on like timesheets of that. So department heads were saying, oh, 1,000 hours from home or 1,000 hours not from home, that kind of thing. And we were able now, after looking at those numbers, to say, because of the 15-month period of time, as long as you worked, even if it's 3 days in 1 month, 17 days in another month, combined a month's worth in your physical office,
Okay.
you are going to be an eligible.
And not
employee.
necessarily consecutively.
Right.
Okay,
It just
okay.
makes it to where you were actually on the front lines, you
Mhm.
were in front of people, and we are making the assumption that that's going to include everyone that would have worked at that time, unless they permanently work from home.
Perfect. Does that help? Okay. All right. Are we comfortable with that? Any other discussion? All right. Well, I think that just about wraps it up. Do we have any citizens signed up to participate?
You have a hand raised.
Yes, please. Sir, please.
Just wanted to bring this is the agenda, item 8. And Renee also found this, there is already a policy of the Board of County Commissioners that's part of the handbook. I'm gonna go ahead and give, if you don't mind, I'll give you all a copy of it.
Thank you.
That addresses all of the issues that have been.
Thank you, Judge.
So,
Okay.
Thank you, Judge.
I think it would have to be, it basically is the memorialization of the existing policy.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that's something that you all would need to have when considering the issue that was on Agenda 8.
Okay, do we have a motion to receive document? Okay,
Second.
motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
I just want to bring that to your attention. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
You want to vote?
Oh, wait, yes. Sorry, I was reading.
Okay, is there, after reviewing this document, any need to reopen any agenda items?
Not for me.
Okay. 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 Citizens participation. That was it. So board comments? District 1? No? District 3?
None.
Okay. Welcome.
Glad to be here. Thank
Yes,
you.
glad to have you. All right, any new business? If there is none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Motion and a second? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you.
I have a big gap.